The quiet evening breeze moved gently through the outer edge of the colony on Terra 9, where Callan sat outside his workshop, watching the double sunset in the sky. Life had become calm for him, routine even. The dangers of his early years as a space engineer were long behind him. Now he spent most of his days fixing transport drones, helping settlers, and trying not to think about the past. But something in the air felt different that evening. From the dusty road leading into the colony, a figure approached. She walked with grace, her steps light, her long, dark coat rippling slightly behind her. At first, Callan thought it was a visitor from another nearby post, but as she stepped closer, he froze. It was her, Viraya, the alien woman he hadn't seen in over 5 years. She had once saved his life on a collapsing mining moon. They had survived together, barely. They had shared fire, hunger, fear, and silence. Then, when rescue came, she left without a word. No messages, no sign. Callan had often wondered what happened to her. But he never expected this. She wasn't alone. Beside her walked a younger girl, clearly not human but close in form. Her skin had a pale lavender tint, and her long silver hair was braided neatly. Her eyes, bright and observant, locked onto Callan the moment they arrived. She clutched something in her hand. A small bag, maybe? A gift? Viraya, Callan said, standing up, still unsure if his eyes were tricking him. She stopped in front of him and gave a soft nod. Her voice was calm but firm. I hope you remember me. He gave a slight laugh, more out of shock than humor. How could I forget? Viraya turned slightly toward the girl. This is Lyra. She's my daughter. Lyra stepped forward and gave a respectful bow, something unfamiliar to Callan but clearly meaningful in her culture. Nice to meet you, Callan said awkwardly, offering his hand. Lyra didn't take it. Instead, she just looked at him quietly, studying him like he was something more than a person. Like he was important. May we come inside? Viraya asked. He nodded and stepped aside. Inside, the small house was clean, but simple. Callan poured them something warm to drink, local herbs brewed with water, and they sat around a small table. Lyra continued to stare at him as if he were some sort of legend. Why now? Callan asked finally, looking at Viraya. She sighed. Because I had to keep her safe. After I left, my planet fell into war. I've been running ever since. I wanted to come back earlier, but I couldn't. Callan nodded. He didn't hold bitterness, just curiosity. You could have sent a message. Anything. I know, she said, looking down, but I didn't know if you'd want to hear from me again. Back then we shared something unusual. I didn't know what it meant. I still don't. He glanced at Lyra, who sat silently, her hands folded neatly on her lap. And she knows me? She's heard many stories, Viraya answered. Stories of how a human helped me, showed kindness, protected me when no one else did. Lyra suddenly stood up and took a step forward. She opened the small bag she'd been carrying and took out a folded cloth. Unwrapping it, she revealed a polished stone with alien markings carved into it. What's that? Callan asked. Viraya's eyes widened slightly. It's a gift stone, from our traditions. Lyra placed it gently on the table in front of Callan. You saved my mother. This is my honor to give. Callan picked it up slowly. The stone felt warm to the touch. It's beautiful, but I don't understand. Viraya leaned forward, her voice quiet. Among my people, when someone saves a life, it creates a bond. A rare one. That bond can pass through generations. Lyra believes she owes you a life debt, and the highest way to honor that is to offer partnership. Callan blinked. You mean marriage? Lyra nodded seriously. The room fell into silence. Outside, the night wind picked up, making the windows hum faintly. Callan looked from Viraya to Lyra, unsure how to respond. Was this a joke? A misunderstanding? Or was this real? She doesn't know me, Callan said gently. We just met. But I know enough, Lyra said in a soft, serious voice. I know the man who saved my mother was brave, kind, and willing to risk everything. I've trained for years. This is not just a duty for me. Varela looked concerned but said nothing. She let Lyra speak freely. Callan felt the weight of the moment. He wasn't angry, he wasn't even afraid. But he was confused deeply. A proposal of this kind wasn't something he expected from anyone, let alone the daughter of someone he'd once fought to keep alive. I don't want to disrespect your custom, he said, looking at Lyra. But I think this is something we should understand better before making decisions. Lyra looked slightly disappointed, but she didn't protest. She only nodded and quietly said, "As you wish." Varela smiled faintly. "That is a wise response, Callan." He looked down at the gift stone again. He didn't know what it all meant, but one thing was clear. His life, once quiet and simple, had just become very, very complicated, and it was only the beginning. The night passed slowly for Callan. He couldn't sleep. He sat on the edge of his bed holding the smooth gift stone in his hand, turning it over again and again. Its surface was warm, almost alive, as if it remembered everything that had been said earlier. Outside, the sky was filled with stars, but his mind was filled with questions. Why had Varela really returned? Why did Lyra think she had to marry him? And what exactly was this bond they kept talking about? He had lived a quiet life for 5 years. Now, suddenly, an alien mother and daughter arrived, and the daughter wanted to marry him out of duty? It didn't make sense. Not yet. When morning came, Callan stepped outside to clear his head. The colony was waking up, people moving around, machines buzzing, the smell of breakfast in the air. But he wasn't ready to speak to anyone. Not yet. Instead, he walked to the edge of the settlement, where a small cliff overlooked the nearby valley. He often came here to think. To his surprise, someone was already there. It was Lyra. She sat on a flat rock, her silver hair falling over her shoulder, her eyes focused on the sky. She didn't turn when he approached. "I didn't mean to disturb you," Callan said. "You're not disturbing me," she replied softly. He sat down a few feet away. "Did you sleep at all?" "Not much," she answered. "I kept thinking about what I said last night." Callan nodded slowly. "So did I." They sat in silence for a few moments, listening to the wind. "Lyra," he said gently, "I need to ask, do you really want this? Or are you doing it because you think you have to?" She looked at him now. Her eyes were clear, serious, and not childish at all. "I was raised with our traditions," she said. "I know the meaning of the bond. My mother told me about you since I was very young. Not just the facts, but how she felt, how she trusted you. She said you were different from others." "That was a long time ago," Callan said quietly. "Maybe," Lyra said. "But to me, you've always been part of my story, even if you didn't know it." He was quiet again. It was a strange feeling. He was sitting with someone he had just met, but she talked like she had known him her whole life. Later that day, Varela joined them in the common room of Callan's house. She had taken a walk herself, probably to give them space. "I think it's time I explained something," she said. Callan leaned forward. "I'd appreciate that." Varela looked at her daughter with warmth before speaking. "Our kind has a tradition, yes. But Lyra's connection to you is more than that." Callan frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Varela took a deep breath. "Lyra was born during a dark time. I was hiding from my people, trying to keep her safe. I was alone, and I often told her stories to keep her calm. Stories about the human who risked his life for me." She looked at Lyra again. "I spoke those stories with emotion, maybe too much. Over time, those stories shaped her view of the world. To her, you became more than just a man from my past. You became a symbol of safety, of honor." Lyra lowered her eyes. Callan understood now. This wasn't just tradition. This was something deeper. The stories of his kindness had taken root in Lyra's heart. He hadn't meant to become anything important to her, but somehow he had. "I didn't know," he said softly. You couldn't have, Varaya said. But now that you do, I don't expect you to accept everything. I only ask that you treat her gently. She's young, but she knows what she feels. I'm not angry, Callan said, just surprised and maybe a little overwhelmed. Varaya gave a small smile. So am I. That afternoon, Callan took Lyra to the workshop. He thought it might help both of them relax. She looked around curiously, touching the small machines with care. You fix all of these? She asked. Most of them, he said. Some are beyond repair. Some just need someone to care enough to try. She picked up a broken scanner and looked at him. Like people? Callan blinked, then laughed gently. Yeah, like people. She smiled for the first time since they arrived. They spent hours together as Callan showed her how to repair a drone's sensor. She was sharp, quick to learn, quick to ask the right questions. Not only was she respectful, she was also clever. By evening, they had repaired 2 drones together. You did good work, he said. She looked pleased. Thank you. I enjoyed this. Callan saw something in her now. Beyond tradition, beyond stories. She had her own spark, her own dreams. Maybe she had offered marriage too soon, but her heart was sincere. That night, Callan sat alone again, holding the gift stone. He wasn't ready to accept the bond Lyra offered, not in the way her people expected, but something had changed. He didn't see her as just a stranger anymore. He saw her as someone real, someone who had crossed light years with her mother to find him. And maybe, just maybe, that meant something worth exploring. The next day started with the sound of rain on the colony rooftops. It rarely rained on Terra 9, but when it did, the smell of wet soil filled the air, and the world seemed softer, slower. Callan stood by his window, watching water drip from the trees. The sky was a calm gray, and the usual buzz of colony machines had quieted. He turned when he heard soft footsteps behind him. Lyra stood in the doorway, holding 2 cups of warm brew. I thought you might want this, she said. Callan smiled and took one of the cups. Thanks. You're up early. I didn't sleep much, she admitted. He nodded. Me neither. They sat by the window for a while, sipping their drinks, in silence. Outside, a few workers moved through the rain in long coats, but most people stayed inside. It was a good day for talking, a good day for truths. Callan, Lyra said finally, can I ask you something personal? He looked at her. Of course. Why did you save my mother? The question caught him off guard. He thought back to that day on the mining moon, the explosions, the collapsing tunnels, the fear. Varaya had been injured, and Callan had carried her for nearly half a day before help arrived. He could have left her and escaped alone, but he didn't. I guess, he said slowly. I just couldn't leave someone behind. It didn't feel right. Lyra looked thoughtful. Even when it put your life in danger? Callan nodded. Especially then. She smiled. Now I understand why she trusted you so much. Later that morning, Varaya entered the room with a small, glowing data crystal. She placed it on the table and tapped it. A hologram appeared above the surface, images of alien symbols, dancing lights, and words in her native language. This is our record of the life bond tradition, she said. Callan watched as the images shifted. One showed 2 figures exchanging stones. Another showed what looked like a ceremony. A third showed a group of people bowing before the couple. Varaya explained, in our culture, when someone saves another's life, a sacred connection is formed. That connection can be honored in many ways, but the highest form is a life bond. Lyra spoke up. It is not forced, but it is deeply respected. Callan nodded slowly. And when Lyra gave me that gift stone, she was offering that bond? Yes, Varaya said. She was. The room was quiet. Callan felt the weight of the moment. I never meant to cause trouble, he said softly. I just did what I thought was right. Varaya gave a warm smile. And that is exactly why this matters. That afternoon, Kalen took a long walk through the colony. The rain had stopped, and the air was fresh. He needed time to think. He stopped by the elder's house. Old Nilo, a human who had lived on Terra 9 since its founding. Nilo had seen many things and understood both human and alien ways better than most. "Something on your mind, boy?" Nilo asked with a grin, offering a seat. Callan explained everything. The return of Varea, Lyra's proposal, the alien custom, and the gift stone. Nilo listened quietly, nodding here and there. When Callan finished, the old man leaned back and said, "You've been given something rare." "I don't know if I can accept it," Callan said. "She barely knows me." "Maybe," Nilo said, "but maybe she knows enough. Sometimes it's not about years. It's about what someone shows you when it matters most." Callan looked down. "I don't want to hurt her, but I'm not ready for something like marriage." "Then don't rush," Nilo said. "Talk to her. Be honest. But don't turn away from what might grow into something good." That evening, Callan returned home. Lyra was in the garden, carefully placing new seeds into the wet soil. She looked up when he approached. "I visited old Nilo today," he said. She smiled. "The elder? He's wise." "He is," Callan agreed. "He helped me think clearly." Lyra wiped her hands and stood. "Did you decide something?" Callan took a deep breath. "I'm not ready for marriage. I don't want to give you a promise I can't keep." She nodded slowly, trying to hide her sadness. "I understand. But," he added quickly, "I don't want you to feel rejected. What you did, the gift stone, the bond, it means something to me. I want to get to know you truly, spend time together, build something real, slowly, if that's okay with you." Her eyes widened slightly. "You want to try?" He smiled. "Yes, as equals, as friends first." Lyra's face lit up with joy. "Yes, I would like that very much." Later, Varea joined them in the main room. Callan told her about their conversation, and she looked relieved. "You made a wise choice," she said. "My daughter has a strong heart, but she also needs time to grow. So do you." "I want to learn about your customs," Callan said. "Not because I have to, but because I care." Varea nodded with respect. "Then we will teach you." The three of them sat together as the stars came out, speaking gently, laughing sometimes, sharing stories of the past and hopes for the future. For the first time in years, Callan didn't feel alone, and for the first time in her life, Lyra felt truly seen. The days passed slowly but peacefully in the small colony on Terra 9. Callan found himself waking earlier than usual, eager to spend time with Lyra and Varea. Their presence brought color back into his quiet life. Lyra was still learning how to adapt to human customs, and Callan was learning about her alien world. Together they bridged two very different cultures with patience and kindness. One morning, Callan invited Lyra to walk with him through the colony's marketplace. The market was alive with noise and color, humans selling fruits, vegetables, and handmade goods, aliens trading rare minerals and fabrics. It was a place where many cultures met and mixed. Lyra looked around in wonder, touching the bright fabrics and tasting strange fruits. She was shy but curious. "Do you like it here?" Callan asked gently. "It's very different from my home," Lyra said with a small smile. "But I like the kindness I see." Callan nodded. "Kindness can be found anywhere if you look." As they walked, Callan noticed how Lyra sometimes glanced nervously at other aliens. He understood. Even though she was one of them, she had grown up away from her people, and the marketplace reminded her of the world she had lost. They stopped by a stall selling small toys. Lyra picked up a simple wooden bird and handed it to Callan. "For you," she said quietly, "to remember this day." Callan accepted the gift with a smile. "Thank you. I will keep it safe." Back at Callan's home, Varea prepared a meal using herbs from their garden. The smell filled the small rooms with warmth. As they ate, Callan asked, "Varaya, what is life like on your planet now?" Varaya's face darkened for a moment. "It is still dangerous. The war continues. Many of my people have fled, like me. Some stay to fight, others try to rebuild." Lyra looked down at her plate. "I want to help someday. To make things better." Callan reached out and gently touched her hand. "You are brave." Varaya smiled softly. "She has courage, but also fear. It is normal." The evening continued with stories from Varaya's past, tales of her childhood, the war, and the hope that still burned within her heart. Callan listened carefully, realizing how much they had both suffered, and yet how much strength they shared. The next day, Callan met with some of the colony's elders and alien diplomats. He wanted to learn more about Lyra's culture and how to respect their traditions. One elder, a tall alien named Silar, explained, "Our customs are old and strong. Marriage is not just between two people, it is a bond between families and communities." Callan nodded. "I understand that. I want to honor that bond, but I also want to do it in a way that is honest and fair." Silar smiled. "You have a good heart. That matters most." The talk gave Callan more confidence. He realized that his hesitation was natural, but he didn't have to fear the future. Instead, he could build it carefully, with respect for both worlds. Later, Callan invited Lyra to his workshop again. They worked side by side, fixing a small robot used for farming. While they worked, Lyra asked quietly, "Callan, do you think we can really belong together, even if we come from different worlds?" Callan looked at her thoughtfully. "I don't know what the future holds, but I do know this. We don't have to be the same to understand each other. What matters is how we treat each other." Lyra smiled, her silver eyes bright. "That is a good answer." They continued working, the robot's motor humming softly as it came back to life. That evening, Callan and Lyra sat beneath the stars in the garden. The sky stretched wide and dark, filled with tiny points of light. Lyra leaned her head on Callan's shoulder. "I feel safe here," she said softly. Callan smiled and wrapped an arm around her. "You are safe, and you belong here, with us." They sat quietly for a long time, the cool night wrapping around them. Suddenly Lyra spoke again, her voice trembling just slightly. "I am afraid sometimes, afraid that I don't belong fully anywhere." Callan squeezed her hand gently. "I understand. It's hard to feel torn between worlds." "You humans call it between two worlds," Lyra said, looking up at him. "It feels like I have to be two people at once." Callan nodded. "Maybe, but you don't have to do it alone. I'm here." Her eyes filled with tears, soft, gentle tears of relief. The next morning brought a surprise. Varaya and Lyra invited Callan to a small ceremony in their garden. "This is a tradition to welcome someone important," Varaya explained. "It is not a bond, but a step toward trust." Callan watched as Varaya handed Lyra a delicate flower crown made of small white blossoms. Lyra placed the crown gently on Callan's head. "This means you are accepted as a friend, someone we trust." Callan felt warmth fill his chest. He looked at both women and said, "Thank you. I am honored." Varaya smiled, her eyes shining. Trust is the first step. Everything else will follow. Days turned into weeks, and the three grew closer. They shared meals, stories, and quiet moments. Callan saw how Lyra's strength and kindness inspired him. Varaya's courage and wisdom reminded him why he had fought so hard to protect her all those years ago. One evening, as they watched the twin moons rise, Callan knew that the offer of marriage was no longer a question to fear. It was a promise to grow together. The morning sun spilled golden light over the colony, warming the earth and waking the small plants in Callan's garden. The air was fresh and clear, carrying the scent of blooming flowers and fresh soil. Callan stood near the garden gate, waiting for Varaya and Lyra. Today was special. After many weeks of getting to know each other, It was time to talk openly about the future. When Varea and Lyra arrived, Callan greeted them warmly. Lyra wore a soft smile, but her eyes showed a quiet hope and a touch of nervousness. They walked together to a quiet spot beneath an ancient tree whose wide branches stretched over the garden like a natural roof. Callan took a deep breath. I want to start by saying thank you, both of you, for trusting me, for sharing your stories, and for being here. Varea nodded. We have trusted you from the moment you saved me. That trust has only grown. Lyra stepped closer. And I want you to know that my offer of marriage was not just tradition. It was my way of showing respect and gratitude, but also something more. Callan looked at Lyra, his heart beating a little faster. I have thought a lot about your offer. He paused, choosing his words carefully. This bond, your culture's tradition, it is strong and important. But I believe that bonds built slowly and with true understanding last the longest. Lyra's eyes shone with interest. So, Callan continued, instead of accepting or refusing your proposal right away, I want to offer something else. Varea and Lyra both looked at him, waiting. I want us to build our relationship step by step, to learn from each other, to share moments, joys, and challenges, to grow a bond based on respect, trust, and care, one that is real and true. Lyra's face softened into a smile brighter than before. That is the answer I was hoping for, she said. Varea reached out and took Callan's hand gently. You have given us a gift far greater than any tradition. Over the next days, their lives settled into a new rhythm. Callan, Varea, and Lyra spent mornings in the garden, afternoons in the workshop, and evenings sharing meals under the stars. They learned from each other's worlds. Callan taught Lyra how to repair machines and build new tools. Lyra taught Callan and Varea about her culture's history and values. Varea shared her wisdom and stories of courage. One afternoon, Callan took Lyra to a quiet hill overlooking the colony. The sky was wide and blue, with fluffy clouds drifting lazily. Do you think you will ever feel fully at home here? Callan asked. Lyra looked out over the landscape. I don't know, but I feel something important. Hope. I feel that home is not just a place. It is where people care for you. Callan smiled. I agree. They sat quietly, feeling the gentle breeze and the soft warmth of the sun. As time passed, Callan and Lyra's friendship grew stronger. They shared laughs, hopes, and dreams. One evening, while watching the twin moons rise, Lyra spoke quietly. Callan, I want to ask you something. He looked at her, curious. Would you walk this path with me? Not because of duty or tradition, but because you want to? Callan reached for her hand. I already am. They sat together under the stars, feeling the quiet promise of a new beginning. Varea watched them with pride and relief. Her daughter was finding peace in a new world, and Callan was opening his heart. She approached Callan one night, speaking softly. You have done more than we ever hoped. You have given Lyra the chance to live and love fully. Callan smiled. And you have shown me the meaning of courage and hope. They stood together, looking out at the stars. Months later, the colony held a small celebration, a welcoming ceremony for Lyra and Varea. Friends, neighbors, and alien visitors gathered to honor the new bonds formed between worlds. Lyra and Callan stood side by side, wearing simple but beautiful garments woven with symbols from both their cultures. Varea smiled as she watched. The gift stone, once a symbol of duty and tradition, now represented a deeper connection, a choice made with love and respect. Callan turned to Lyra and whispered, Thank you for trusting me. Lyra squeezed his hand gently. Thank you for accepting me. As the ceremony began, lights twinkled in the evening sky, and music filled the air. The colony danced, laughed, and celebrated the joining of two worlds. And in the heart of it all, Callan, Varea, and Lyra knew their journey was just beginning.